Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee Talk! Today, we're talking about the Mothman. Don. So this has been a long-awaited Coffee Talk. You all have requested a Mothman video for a very long time, so I'm going to give you my take on the Mothman. Don't forget to support this channel. If you enjoy Coffee Talks and you'd like to see them continue, please do leave a gift for me in the PayPal. There's a link in the description down there. Or you can send something to my P.O. Box, which is also in the description. And ensure that I keep doing this instead of driving DoorDash. So everybody knows when I drive DoorDash, I don't make videos. So if you want to see the videos keep coming, please join those supporters of the Sheep Pen who support the ministry-oriented nature of what I do in my other videos, and join them in supporting Coffee Talk and keeping me afloat so I can keep making these videos for y'all. So, Mothman. This all kind of stems from a series of events in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, in 1966 and 1967. During that time period, there became a rash of sightings of a creature who got labeled Mothman, but ultimately the creature's more bird-like or bat-like than moth-like. I don't know where they got the, I guess Mothman rolls off the tongue and Batman was taken. They didn't want to get sued by the TV show potentially. I'm not sure how it got labeled Mothman, but here we go. What people are seeing is apparently some kind of hybrid human-bird creature. Most describe it having a beak. Some say that it has more like an ape-like face and wings like a bat. It stands about 7 feet tall. One of the people who saw this creature up close described why some people don't see the beak, because the beak is apparently translucent and of a much lighter color, and if you don't see it in the appropriate light or with a profile view, you'll miss the beak altogether, and the face seems more simian, or some say even dog-like. Don. Flying dog, bird, bat, moth thing. So these series of events produced a bunch of compelling eyewitness accounts of being harassed by this Mothman bird creature thing. And they describe a creature 7 feet tall, human build except for it having wings, and in some cases people talk about it having talons or claw-like feet. And one of the things I found interesting is that most of the accounts don't see the wings at first. The wings are folded and they just think it's a man standing in the road, except for its piercing, glowing, bright red eyes. Don. Red-eyed devil bird thing. And so, but the creature stands with its wings wrapped around it, kind of like Dracula, Count Dracula, the bat human hybrid creature of mythology, how he wraps himself up in his cloak and covers up his face with his cape. And so this is how the Mothman is described before it's taken flight or when it's not taking flight. And the Birdman, or the Mothman, however you want to call it, is seen wrapped in his wings to the point where people describe it first thinking it's a long trench coat or some kind of robe or jacket that's long. And I find this very interesting because that's something bats do. Could this be a cryptid? Could it be a bat, human, hybrid, undiscovered species like Bigfoot? Don. Like we got enough boogeymen in the woods. We don't need some more. And it reminds me of a time where I had a close encounter with a mysterious creature. I was coming home from church. A lot of my stories go with me coming home from church or work, as it were. And it was just at dusk. And I had about a 3/4 mile long dirt driveway. And I lived out in the rural area of West Texas, central West Texas. And the town there nearby was called the Gateway to West Texas. So it gives you an idea. And I pulled onto my driveway right at dusk, just about where you kind of need your headlights to see clearly. And as I started down my driveway on the edge of the bottom of a hill that goes up to my house, I saw a creature standing in the middle of the road. It stood about 3 feet tall, and I would describe it as looking like a 3 or 4 year old toddler in silhouette. Um, but standing much more defiantly, looked like its arms were crossed, and it was staring right at me with bright red, glowing eyes. Don't, don't, don't. So I stopped for fear that I would spook it, and I watched it for a minute. And then I slowly crept forward in my car until I could see it real good. And what it was about a 3 foot tall bat. And he had his big bat wings wrapped around his body, just like I described, just like Dracula. And he was peering at me with this "I hate you" look, and his eyes were shining bright red. And I watched him for quite a while. I watched him, and he watched me for a matter of minutes. And then I slowly started creeping forward till I got very close to him, and then he decided he'd had enough. He turned and looked to the sky, leapt into the air, and flew away. And he had about a 3.5 or 4 foot, about a 4 foot wingspan at least, maybe 5. He was a big, big bat. And I started to wonder whether I'd seen a cryptid. And so I went and Googled it and found out that there is a breed of actual bat that is something you can see in Mexico. The Mexican, I believe it's a Mexican fruit bat, and some of the older males get as big as the one I saw. Although it's rare to see them that far north in Texas, it's not unheard of. So what I saw was an actual animal, but I will tell you, it gave me the creeps. If you've not come face to face with a big old bat like that with a head the size of a dog, then you've not got the chills properly, because that will chill you to the bone, let me tell you. But these people weren't seeing any ordinary bat, and the fact that it had a beak and not a bat face, which kind of looks like a dog or a cat in some instances, for it to have a bird-like beak but bat-like wings makes it must be some sort of hybrid, crossbred, experiment gone awry, Montauk monster escaped kind of thing. But I have another alternate explanation for it, because I don't think the Mothman was a cryptid. I think the Mothman was a fallen angel. Don't. And if you look into ancient history, you find lots of these descriptions of bird-human hybrids. The Anunnaki, many of us think of as giants. Many of us think of them as humanoid. But there were, if you recall, in the imagery, there were Anunnaki that were human-faced, who had beards like humans, and some were depicted with wings and some weren't. They were all depicted as giants, like Gilgamesh in the Epic of Gilgamesh. And Gilgamesh was so big that he was seen, he was pictured in ancient art as holding a lion, a full-maned male lion in his arms and petting it like a kitty cat. So that tells you how big he was. But there's a whole nother group of these Anunnaki that have the face of birds. They have the face of birds, human bodies, muscular human male bodies, and beaks, and the whole head basically of a bird. And then that makes me think of Egyptian mythology, where you have these ancient Egyptian gods of about the same era as the Anunnaki, who were purveyors of wisdom, mathematics, science, spiritual realities. And Thoth is one of those. He has the long beak of the ibis bird, and he was depicted as a human with the head of an ibis bird. Now that's very different than the Mothman or even the Sumerian, Anunnaki images that have beaks, because those look more like eagles or they look more like hawks. And that also goes with it's not Thoth. What's the other one? Horus. Horus, the other Egyptian bird head god man thing. And he's definitely looks like a hawk or a bird of prey. And I find that the Mothman stories really link up for me, image-wise, with these ancient gods that were part of the Watchers or the fallen angels. So if what we're seeing are these fallen angels, these creatures who rebelled against God, what explains their bird-like appearance? Well, there are two kinds of fallen angels. There are two kinds of demons, as it were. And Paul, in his, I think his writings to the Ephesians, I think it's Ephesians, he talks about, it's Ephesians 6. We battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers of wickedness in high places. Now, those words are not generic, and it's not designed to give you any idea that maybe it's they're rulers of some kind, principalities and powers, and he doesn't explain himself. And the reason being is that Paul was trained in Jewish mysticism, and part of the Jewish mysticism and angelology and demonology that would have been very much around at the time Paul wrote this. There are divisions of angels. You've heard about the seraphim, the fire angels with 6 wings. And those angels actually wrap themselves in their wings as well. It says 2 of the sets of wings, 2 of the wings were designed to cover or surround or shroud their legs. And the top 2 were designed to shroud their face and head. And the middle 2 were for flying purposes. So that's a seraphim, and we see them exhibiting this same kind of covering their body with their wings kind of behavior that we see in Mothman and in bats. And so, but you've got your seraphim and you've got your cherubim, right? And there's a few more classifications, but lower down, see, those are the angels and the archangels that circle the throne in heaven. These are the angels most associated with God. They're connected to God, they're from heaven, and you don't typically see them on earth, nor do they bother themselves much with humans. And the other angels, according to Jewish and other mystic writings, are what they call principalities and powers. These are lower angels, still very powerful, and they're the ones they're what the watchers were. The angels that were the sons of God that looked down upon the daughters of men in Genesis 6. These are the angels that are talked about, who are the father of the Nephilim in the writings of Enoch, in the book of Enoch. And so these principalities and powers are 2 specific kinds of angels. And from what angelologists can gather, this is the main body of the army of angels that rebel against God and cause the rebellion that caused Lucifer to be cast down. They are the ones that sided with Lucifer. And the principalities and powers are 2 races of angels. So the principality race of angels are just what it says. They're princes, they're rulers. They're often depicted as human in all forms, with or without wings. And they can pass for human. And although they're big and alarming in their size, they're not grotesque or frightening looking. And they're the button pushers, the pencil pushers, the politicians, the rulers. And under them are the powers. The powers are the real foot soldiers of angels. They're the warring angels. They're depicted as winged, as grotesque in their face, non-human features. They're frightening. They have red eyes, and they use weapons that are so heavy that humans can't lift them. And these are the angels that do and demons, as it were, fallen angels, who do the most of the fighting. The angels depicted in Revelation, the angels around the throne, the cherubim, the seraphim, and the oraphim, they are servants of God, and they work primarily in the midst of God in heaven. And the principalities and powers are the ones that enforce God's will, or in the case of the fallen angels, Satan's will, on the earth and in all of the realms of the kingdom. And these powers are quite frightening. They're larger than your average human. You would never mistake them for a human. They're very frightening, and they are, I believe, the basis of what we consider a demon. When people see a demon, when they have dreams of demons, when they see specters of demons that are frightening, that take your breath away, they typically start to look like these powers, these warring angels that are meant to be terrible and frightful. And they can cause a grown man to become paralyzed or even die from fright. And of course, the appearance of angels, whether they be principalities or powers, when they come to earth, one of the first things they say when they're on God's side is they say, "Fear not." That's the first words out of their mouth. They do not want you to have this reaction of fear. They do not want to paralyze you with their image. And this is why I believe principalities are the primary contactors to humans who get contacted by angels. So the angel Gabriel is more than likely an archangel, but maybe one from the principalities um, division or race of angels. And these principalities are the ones that appear to they appear to Mary to tell her that and they remember they can appear as human in human form. They appear to Mary to tell her that Jesus is going to be born. They appear to the shepherds and guide them to the site where Jesus is born. The angel that wrestled with Jacob in the Jacob's Ladder story, where he wrestled with an angel all night until the angel had to cheat and use supernatural powers to cripple him to try to win. Because I guess Jacob was a handful. That guy could fight, apparently, fighting an angel and holding his own. And so you have principalities and powers, principalities being the sort of angel that can communicate with us and wouldn't scare us and don't want to scare us. And then you have the powers who are just so frightening that to lay eyes on them would terrify a human and make them lose it, right? And so I find interesting that godly angels don't want you to feel fear, but demons feed on fear. One of the things we know about the dark cabal and their behavior and activities in this world, the human demons, as it were, that they feed on fear. They're fear mongers. They like to create fear, stir fear. They feed off of fear. Would you be surprised to know that I believe that Monsters, Inc., the seemingly harmless child's movie, is actually a documentary? Don't. If you recall, the plot of this cartoon is that there are these monsters that are frightening to behold, and they hide in your closet or under your bed, and they attempt to scare you so that they can harness the energy of fear. That fear is the food of these principalities and powers, especially the powers. They get powered up. They get their power from your fear. And that this is something that the elitists have been accused of doing, which is torturing and killing people, and by scaring them to death first, getting them so afraid that their adrenaline gland shoots this drug of adrenaline into their system, and then parts of the body is consumed and used as a drug. And I think the harvesting of fear by the principalities and powers is more of a direct energy drain than an actual physical feasting upon the fear. But nonetheless, they're fueled by and they are powered by your fear, and especially apparently the fear of children. So there's no doubt that this creature, the Mothman, that people saw in 1966 and 1967 was scaring people. He never attacked anyone, according to any of these accounts, and was actually able to be shooed away by one person who threw rocks at it. But it did seem to chase you if you fled. One case in 1967 in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, talks about this entity, this Mothman, this red-eyed, winged, beaked demon, was keeping up with a car, a 1957 Chevy Bel Air, and we know that car had some guts, right? That car could move out. And they went to 70 miles an hour down a narrow road, and this thing was keeping pace with them side by side. It was not losing ground at all. They went to 80, then to 90, and even at 100 miles an hour, they couldn't shake this thing. And the only way they were able to ditch it was they finally got back to town, and the street lights kept it away. That's another thing. These are nocturnal creatures. They're seldom seen in daylight, but there is one account of a woman who saw one of these things standing in the middle of the road, and she saw it in daylight, and she was definitely mesmerized by the red glowing eyes that still glowed red even in bright daylight. And the thing stood its ground, and it was trying to get a fear-based reaction out of her. And according to her, it was terrifying. These viewings went on until a tragedy occurred in the community. This town of Point Pleasant is on the Ohio border. The border that divides Ohio from West Virginia is the Ohio River. There was a large expansion bridge that crossed the Ohio River that got a ton of traffic every day. At the pinnacle point of these sightings, suddenly you have this bridge collapsing at rush hour with many semi trucks and vehicles on the bridge. It happened in the blink of an eye, and the bridge collapses. And I believe the death toll was 57, and several bodies were never found. Almost everyone on that bridge perished in that accident. And here's the thing, when the accident happened, the Mothman activity stopped. Don't, don't, don't. So this Mothman seems to be drawn to tragedy, and it may be because it feeds off of our fear. Maybe because it feeds off of negative emotions. If this thing is in fact a demon, a power, as it were, a warring angel, fallen warring angel, then striking fear into the hearts of people and feeding off the energy that they give is part of the persona of these creatures. And the the mass tragedy was either caused by the Mothman, or the Mothman was simply there to witness it and to absorb all of the negative energy and grief of the families who lost people, because everyone lost someone on that bridge. Point Pleasant was not a big town, and everyone had either a father or a brother or a friend or someone who died on that bridge. And the town was stricken with grief. And some of the people were from the town across in Ohio, and there was grief on both sides of the river. And one of the reasons they linked the Mothman to this bridge collapse is because there are some photographs of what appear to be a winged creature in broad daylight flying in and perching on top of that bridge. A creature with a human outline with wings. So we're talking about a winged human being landing on this bridge. And whether those photographs are legit or not is a question of debate, but there was eyewitnesses from the people who took the picture who said they saw the Mothman on the bridge the day before the collapse. How many of you have seen the original Twilight Zone movie, from back in the 80s? There was a famous clip, one of the storylines in that composite of stories that made up the Twilight Zone movie, where there is a gremlin on the wing of the plane. And this man sees the gremlin, and you don't know whether he's losing his mind or not until the plane crashes because an engine catches on fire. And he sees this gremlin using a tool to destroy the. So whether this was a saboteur like the gremlins that we hear about that get into the machinery and muck up the machinery and destroy things and cause cars to break down, see the movie Gremlins, right? Whether that's what we're dealing with, or whether we're dealing with potentially the angel of death. Dom, dom, dom. The angel of death is often depicted as faceless, and all you can see is its bright red eyes peering out from underneath a hood. Thoth, the Egyptian god who was said to have brought good things to that world, is depicted in a hood, oftentimes with just the beak coming out. If you recall the Black Death, the masks of the doctors that were worn by some of the doctors, they wore these beaks that look like that ibis bird, and it was for the purpose of protecting themselves from the smell of death, right? That they wore these almost like gas masks. And those images are also depicted in the Eyes Wide Shut, that the Illuminati parties, they often wear these ibis bird masks. And it's all tied to these ancient deities, these fallen angels. There are two types, as depicted in the Sumerian carvings. You've got the ones that look like humans with the long square beards with the wavy curls in it, and you have the other ones with wings and the face of a bird. And so I don't think we're dealing with a cryptid in the Mothman. I think we're dealing with a demon. Don. A demon that may be acting as the angel of death, a predictor of tragedy, or is he the purveyor of the tragedy? Did he cause it? Or is he simply there because he knows it's going to happen, and he's there to soak up the negative energy from a natural disaster or some kind of tragedy that puts off this mass amount of negative energy that he can feed on and grow stronger from? Don't. You're getting lots of don'ts today. So are we dealing with the cryptid? Some people in the Mothman story from West Virginia want to talk about the TNT area. It's called that because it was a munitions plant during World War II that was abandoned. And a lot of the chemicals they used to make ordnance there was dumped on the ground and leached into the water. And some people think that the Mothman is a genetic mutation from some kind of chemical or radioactive spill from World War II. I find that hard to believe. There is mutation in animals, according to toxic waste and other chemicals. Google the wild dogs of Chernobyl. Oh yeah, Chernobyl, the place in Russia where the nuclear power plant melted down. There was a creature spotted in the days before the meltdown flying around Chernobyl, and he's called the Blackbird of Chernobyl. And he is, for all descriptions, matches the Mothman discussion. The moth. I'm tongue tied today. The Mothman images in Chernobyl. And so everywhere there is tragedy, there are these Mothman sightings, these warring angels, these demonic spirits, potentially in human form, of a bird and an animal crossed up. They're not the principalities, angels that look human. They're the powers, the angels that look terrifying. And more than likely, these are fallen angels, not angels working for God. So my theory goes as thus: that the Mothman was a sighting of these creatures, or maybe just one creature, who was there because they knew the bridge would collapse. Maybe they helped speed it along. It did perch on the bridge. Maybe it was just getting a good spot so we could sit and watch. I do believe that these bird-human hybrid creatures, whatever they are, these fallen angels, can cloak themselves and be invisible at times, and they only appear to drive people into fear. The man that wrote the book Mothman Prophecies, his theory is that they're interdimensional beings, that they're not aliens from another planet. He describes them as beings that can appear and disappear by shifting their vibration and landing in our dimension for a time and a purpose. And this would also explain why some of them seem to dematerialize in front of you. A Christian man, when he was 19, as part of this same timeline in the 1960s, in this Point Pleasant area, saw this Mothman perched on a light pole out in front of his bedroom window. And he said that he began to plead the blood of Jesus over and over again, and that this thing dematerialized and dissolved in front of him. He just said, like when you pour salt on a slug. I found that really interesting. So I don't believe they're cryptids. I believe that they are sightings of demonic entities that we know of as powers. They're frightening, warring angels designed to strike fear into the hearts of their foe. And I believe they became much uglier and more frightening when they joined with Lucifer in the Great Rebellion and were cast out of heaven. So tell me what you think. Was Thoth one of these birdmen? How about the birdmen of the Anunnaki? Were they were we seeing the two types of angels that are associated with Earth? The Watchers, some of them being warring angels with bird faces, and some of them being more intellectuals, princes, as it were, in human form, seen wearing crowns typically. Do you believe that we're dealing with mass hysteria? Some people claim that the reason that they stopped seeing the Mothman is because when the accident and the bridge collapse happened, everyone was absorbed with that, and they dropped the mass hysteria of the Mothman sightings. But yet they continued. There were Mothman sightings in Chicago in 2018. There were Mothman sightings on the Rio Grande through the 70s and 80s. And this is something that people keep seeing. Tell me what you think it is. It's a big mystery to me. So tell me what you think in the comments section. What are we dealing with here? I hope you enjoyed this coffee talk. And please support the channel with a thumbs up, comment in the comment section, and or clicking on one of those links and making a gift or a contribution to keep this channel going. Support this channel. It's completely not funded by YouTube or any advertisement. You won't see any advertisements on any of my videos over the last couple of years. And so it basically is supported by people like you. So looking for your support in the PayPal there. All right, we'll see you next time. I'm about out of coffee and out of time. We'll see you next time on Coffee Talk.